Hey, Coach Boynton, obviously two amazing wins in the last couple of days, but no rest for the weary. We head out this afternoon and head to Waco and take on number three Baylor and then number six West Virginia. Uh, uh, Tell me, coming off this amazing weekend, what were you most proud of with your team?
I'll just start with we won two games. Well, we won two games against our rival here, and we won them in different ways. And I don't know if we played great, but we found a way just competitively to get ourselves over the hump. And they've got a really good team themselves. The games were very different. It was weird, felt like one continuum as weird flow to it. So I was just proud of the kids for competing at that level for a long time.
Perfect. Well, we will start with questions. First one coming from Jacob Unruh. Go ahead, Jacob.
Mike, I'm just going to go ahead and start. What's the update on Ice?
He's okay. I don't. I don't like doing these before practice, but today we had to.
Right.
So I can't tell you how he did today. We didn't do much yesterday as a team. He got some cardio in, but we didn't. We just couldn't. We just this stretch here. We just got to be smart about physically how we're approaching it. So I don't have a great answer. I think he's better, but I can't give much confidence into how he's doing just because we haven't practiced yet today. We'll practice and leave. So, I'm sorry. I wish I had better information for you, but I just don't, to be honest.
I appreciate your honesty on it. Does you mentioned something about how you're approaching this stretch? You've got two road games, one's in West Virginia, and you go to Kansas City. I would assume Indianapolis after that. How do you approach the stretch? This is such a different stretch, a lot of road trips. You're not home much. What's different? How do you adjust?
Yeah, and I'll say this: we this year has been a challenge, and we got here to the end, and I wanted to try to make sure we put our kids in best position to finish strong. With that being said, we knew we're going to be asked to try to get as many of these games in as possible. We're one of, I think, 4 teams that are actually going to play the full 18. So trying to make sure I balance trying to find ourselves in the best position in the league as possible, but also knowing that next week's a big week. We're going to be asked to play multiple games and play today and tomorrow, not even today and a couple of days rest. And so I've got to be mindful. Like yesterday, basically was an off day for us, which it usually wouldn't be, but it needed to be because we're going to turn around and travel here for a while. So just trying to get a feel for how the guys are doing more mentally than physically. Our preparation yesterday was totally film related. Did some stretching and shooting some free throws. And depending on how tomorrow's game goes, will determine what we do on the day in between. And as a coach, you just kind of got to have a feel for your guys, knowing that we're playing teams that we've played already, and there's not going to be a whole lot of adjustments that are being made. But at the same time, trying to give the kids the best chance to go out there and have success with fresh legs to the degree with which you can control.
I was going to ask you, you mentioned you've played Baylor once, obviously. How much stock do you put in that first game, considering it's been more than a month? Baylor's had their pause. They haven't quite been maybe the same Baylor to a lot of people's eyes. So how much stock do you put in that first game? You didn't have Caden Rondell either.
Yeah, totally different game. And they played pretty damn well. It was a high level game yesterday. I don't know how many people watched it, but goes to shows the strength of our conference. It looked like an Elite Eight game. Watching it. That's the way I felt watching that game between those two yesterday. So it'll be a totally different matchup. Obviously, we don't really have any film on how they're going to guard Cade because he didn't play against them, and it's a great challenge for us. They're still one of the premier teams. It's going to be hard for them to fall off the number 1 seed line for the tournament. So it's an opportunity for us to see exactly how we stack up with having Cade available for us.
You guys got up on Baylor the first half. I think they had the largest lead at that point in the season on Baylor without Cade. And there's been a lot of talk of Cade and the other guys. Was that kind of maybe the moment though that a lot of the other guys maybe kind of clicked and realized that they could contribute in more ways than just with Cade on the floor?
Yeah, I mean, I think particularly in that stretch of 2 games where he didn't play, Caleb and MA kind of became more of a force. And so no question that's been something that we've tried to build on since he's been back. And I think our guys, for the most part, have learned how the parts work together a little bit better.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike.
Our next question is from Marshall Scott. Go ahead, Marshall.
Yeah, Mike, Jacob started with Isaac. I'll start with Avery. He took a couple of hard falls. How's he doing?
He's doing okay. He actually did less than probably anybody yesterday because he had a root canal. So, I mean, again, COVID kind of rules the conversation every day, but those things happen too, right? Those things haven't stopped. We had Bryce with the dental issues earlier in the year, and you get normal things that you got to deal with. So I think he'll be fine. He kind of hyperextended his knee on a play late, but he's as competitive a guy as I've ever been around, and I'd be more than shocked if he's not able to go.
Y'all's team dentist seems to be working overtime this year.
Yeah.
Do you talk with your team about the kind of mental aspect of being on the road these next few weeks? It seems like it's not even like a normal year where they could maybe do stuff outside of the hotel room. It seems like they're probably just be locked down for these next 3-4 weeks.
Not that much. We haven't talked about it that much. It's really hard for me to even give them an idea. I've never done it either. Nothing I love more, especially when the city is appropriately set up to get out and take a walk, right? And can't do that this year. Some places I like to have a restaurant that I like to go eat at. Can't do that. And so it's been an adjustment for all of us. I think for the most part, our guys like each other. And I think they've done a good job of kind of coalescing around the idea that there's a task here, right? They're trying to accomplish something and they don't want to disrupt it.
In the first game, you guys had a lot of success in the post. I believe Caleb and MA both had pretty good games. What kind of attributed to that?
Not having Cade and Rondell was probably a big part of it. 2 of our more aggressive offensive, initiators, but the strength of their team is also on the perimeter. And we got a lot of respect for them. And obviously, they clinched the regular season championship yesterday, and they've had a hell of a season. But the strength of their team is in the backcourt, and I say that with great respect to Mark Vital, who kicked our butts and has a lot of times we played against him. But it's an area we feel like maybe we could try to, exploit and maybe gain an edge, because I do think both backcourts are pretty dynamic.
And last time you were in Waco, you got thrown out of the game. Kind of what do you remember about that? And then a follow-up to that is, what did you think of Chris Beard's ejection from earlier in the season?
Well, I don't know if I'm gonna get kicked out, because I don't know where you can go if you get kicked out of a game this year on the road. So, where do they send you this year, right? And I definitely can't go shake their hands. Like, I can't do any of that stuff this year. So I'm gonna try to stay with our team as much as possible. The Bear deal, I mean, again, it's probably one of those deals that he regrets. Get caught up in the emotion of the moment. It's a highly competitive league, and everybody's fighting for everything they can, trying to stand up for their team. And I'm sure, in hindsight, he probably wishes he had handled the situation better. But I get how sometimes your emotions can get the best of you.
Appreciate it, Mike.
Our next question is from Matt Hubbard. Go ahead, Matt.
Thanks. So, you spoke about COVID-19 earlier, and we've seen teams taken out of games for weeks at a time because of COVID. When you see things like that, how does that affect you or your team psychologically?
When we see other teams that have disruptions?
Yes, sir. I mean, does that kind of put a thought in the back of your mind too? that could happen to you?
Well, it has. So
Yeah.
it doesn't necessarily put a thought in them. I mean, we know everybody's kind of wide-eyed going through this deal. That's unfortunate part of this season. And we just hope it doesn't have a major impact on the postseason, because obviously that's what everybody's trying to play to get to and have an opportunity to really play in. So, I would imagine from a percentage standpoint, 90% of the teams probably dealt with it at some point during the season. And like I said, I hope for the better of the game and the tournament itself that it's not a big part of the tournament itself in terms of having these games be able to be played.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it.
Our next question is from Barry Trammell. Go ahead, Barry.
Yeah, Mike, a little off subject, but I'm working on a story on Amy Bonner, who first year in the Big 12 calling games. It strikes me as it's sort of odd. She's made very little ripple. There hadn't been a big deal about it. Nobody's seemed to bat an eye about it. How do you think she's handled herself, first woman calling Big 12 basketball games, and your experiences with her? How's that going?
It's been pleasant. I think it's great for our game that there's opportunities out there. I'm a girl dad myself, and so to know that there's more doors open out there for her in the future is great. I think Amy particularly, I think she's done a really good job. We haven't had her a ton, but she's called a few of our games. I think she's handled herself well. It's obviously a male dominant profession. I'm sure it's not easy. I'm sure there's some challenges, with guys who have strong reputations and maybe a little bit more aggressive tones. But, I haven't heard of any issues with her, and I think she's done a really good job. And I hope that she'll continue to inspire other females out there to pursue this if this is their passion.
Have you, I guess in the off season, you guys were told she was going to be a part of the rotation. Was there any trepidation by anybody in the league that you know of, or did everybody just sort of take it fairly well?
No, I mean, I hadn't heard any. And again, the coaches in our league, and I feel fortunate to be a part of it. We got a pretty good rapport amongst each other. And so we all talk very often. I text Scott Drew at probably 1:00 this morning to congratulate him on winning the league. It's hard. We understand what we're going through. So, I think if there was some angst or some trepidation that I would have heard, but I haven't. And I think that's a sign that everybody feels she's qualified and has done a good job, and B, that, this is a good thing. This is something that's probably going to continue. And that, again, if she's one of the best people available to do this job, then she should have an opportunity to go out and do it.
Thanks, Mike.
Your next question is from Robert Allen. Go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, Coach, I just wanted to ask you, how much do you play bracketology? How much do you pay attention to it?
I follow it. I don't. There's so many now, right? It's hard to. It's more difficult now, I think, than maybe 10 years ago when Lenardi and maybe 2 or 3 other people might have been dabbling in it. I mean, there's probably 100 bracketologists, and what's valid? What are the metrics they're using? And so I don't really focus on it, but I do. I check it occasionally, and I want to kind of get an idea of the teams we're playing, how we're doing, how we stack up, because the goal is for us to be in contention and to be a part of that conversation, and certainly we feel like we put ourselves in a good position this year. Obviously, it'll be a little bit of a different deal this year, though, Robert, just because there's imbalanced schedules. You're going to have teams, even in our own league, who Texas Tech and West Virginia both got to play Baylor at home, but didn't have to go to Waco. Oklahoma had to go to Waco, but didn't get to play Baylor in Norman. And so how do you value those games versus one another to determine when the postseason, who should be a 5 or 4 or 3 and who gets the matchup versus the 12 versus the 13 or whatever. And so it's a little bit different, but we knew that. And that's just part of the deal this year.
On your staff, do you have a defensive coordinator? Do you break it up that way? Is there a defensive go-to coach? And my next question will be the reason I'm asking this.
Yeah, so this is actually the first year we actually split up our staff, offense, defense, and our defensive staff is headed up by Scott Sutton and Eric Pastrana, and they've done a great job of helping, kind of streamline those thoughts from a scouting perspective, and offensively, myself and Cannon and Keaton Page and Barry Henson have helped, and then our 2 GAs have helped our defensive coaches, and so that's kind of how we did it this year.
The reason I ask is, could you have envisioned back early in the year with as young a team as you've got, a team that could switch defenses as much as this one has, man zone, several different versions of zone, and now seems to be playing each defense really, really capably and very aggressively, I might add.
Yeah, and again, the staff has done a great job. Eric Pastrana has actually led the charge in this regard. And I think the first time we used the zone pretty extensively was Marquette, and he was pretty adamant in watching film that was going to be something we needed to do, and he's been very, very good at helping our guys understand, not that we were playing zone because we didn't think we could play man, but that because it was going to be an effective defense for our roster, our length, our athleticism. And the guys have really bought in. Him and Scott have taken the reins. They pretty much coach our defense every practice. Me and Cannon and KP and Barry, we pretty much focus more on the offensive side. And, every now and then it becomes a little competitive within the office. I'm not sure how many games we won 55-50, but those guys feel pretty good. The offensive staff likes when we score 94 in Norman.
Get it. Thanks, Coach.
Our next question is from Ryan Breeden. Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, Mike, first, just kind of as a fun one, going back a little bit to what Robert was just saying, obviously, and Joe Lenardi's, if you looked at it, he's got you guys as a 4 seed in Illinois' region. What would you think overall just of getting to have a reunion with Brad Underwood at some point?
A reunion? I don't know about a reunion.
Yeah, you know what I mean. You know what I mean. You coach against him, but
I get the question. Brad's a good coach, and they got a hell of a team. I'll say that. I'd have a hard time looking that far ahead, to be perfectly honest, right? I haven't coached in a single NCAA tournament game yet. So have to play them, we'd have to win 2, and I'd be pretty focused on those. I get the storylines and the intrigue from a fan's perspective. If we got there, I'll have no problem answering any questions about it. But we got a long ways to get there. If we get there, I feel pretty good about what we've accomplished to that point.
Yeah, I figured I'd just throw it out there to see if you had any thoughts on it. But
I follow it. I follow it, and I'm aware that that's something that could potentially happen. But it's still so much time between now and then. What I like to do is focus on what's right in front of us, so our guys don't get distracted.
Right, and so my next thing for you would be, you guys, since the beginning of the conference schedule back with TCU and then Texas and West Virginia, stuff like that, you guys have taken what seems to be a complete 180 in how you guys handle late game situations, especially close games. And I know you pointed to that Baylor game without Cade at a time when your young guys kind of started to wake up and realize that they don't need Cade to do this. But can you look at a time where you can pinpoint, like, you saw a change in demeanor in those late game situations?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that's happened here in the last couple of weeks. So the TCU game was looking for a nice way to say this, but we have the ball with no shot clock. So worst case scenario, we should go to overtime, right? And not only do we not go to overtime, but we don't really get a great shot, and we lose the game on a close call. I'll say it nicely, a close call. And maybe could have went the other way in regulation. And I think that gave us an opportunity to show the value of every single possession and being aware. And it's probably one of the few moments where, Cade had the ball and just didn't completely grasp the situation. And so I think that was a big turning point for us. But I think even more so when we got back from Lawrence, the team really embraced. We didn't play particularly well. And again, their backs were against the walls at that point, and they played like their backs were against the walls. But I think since then, our team's had an unbelievable focus on making sure that no matter what happened, that we felt like we played the way we're supposed to play. And we haven't always played well, but we've played really hard and played with great intention and purpose in the last 5 games. And fortunately, they've all turned out to be wins, but I think it's more just the mindset that we've had since then.
Is it a bit of a chemistry thing too? Just the guys kind of starting to mesh and get the feel for each other's game?
Yeah, there's a part of it that happens there. The challenge we've had is we've also there's been guys in and out of the lineup for whatever reason. Missed K for a few games. Rondell missed the game. We had Farron out for a while. Got Ice out now. We've, and so that makes it difficult to keep that chemistry building. Early in the year, we missed Avery for 3 games. Kind of flew under the radar because we were still winning. But those things have been constant. That's probably the normal part of the season. But again, COVID just dominates every conversation. So a lot of those things kind of take a backseat to what you're dealing with.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned earlier on this year that one of the things you were doing with your guys in practice was practicing and doing like game-like situations in 4-minute scenarios where you've got final 4 minutes left. So is there how helpful have those been for you guys? What have you seen during those drills? And 2, what are some other things you guys have been doing to just get your guys ready for those late game situations?
Yeah, that part of our approach isn't new. I would say this about this group. They didn't understand it at the beginning of the year. First of all, they didn't know why we were playing in 4-minute segments. They didn't understand that that's kind of how the college game is played. And so now they've got enough experience, and we put them in situations. Sometimes we predetermine what the situation is, and we'll say, hey, we're down 8 with 4 minutes to go. Cade's got 4 fouls. Caleb's fouled out, whatever the case is, to just try to create a sense of urgency. And I think they're used to it. And we talk about it in game. And just about all of our games, it's a situation we've seen in practice. So the other day, I think we were up 2 at the 4-minute media. It was strange because the 8-minute media happened under 4 minutes to go. And then there was the 4-minute media 30 seconds later. So it was a strange game in a lot of ways, and that was just one of them.
And then my last one for you, how helpful has it been? I know obviously you'd rather have Ice on the floor with you guys, but how helpful has he been from the sidelines in those post-game situations last 3 games?
He's been tremendous. In fact, Ice has allowed me to think while I'm on the bench during timeouts about what I should do next, because the things that we need to talk about that happened. So there's 2 things that happened in the timeout. You talk about what's just happened. Hey, we blew the last ball screen. We need to do it better here. And you need to talk about what you're going to do moving forward. Well, a lot of times if he's part of the game, he may be talking about that, but these last couple of games with him out, that's all he's kind of taken ownership of that part. And I've just been able to focus on, all right, what play do we need to be running next? Whether it be a ball screen for Cade or getting the ball inside the KB or a defensive switch. And he's really just run the timeouts from here's what we're seeing, guys, that we can be doing better from these last 3 or 4 possessions. So he's almost been like an extra assistant coach. But I'd much rather have him on the court.
Right. Yeah. Clear. And I know you mentioned he's got a bright future on the court, but could you see him at some point ever being a coach?
Yeah, I could see it. Kind of got to decide if that's something he wants to do. He certainly has the intangible skills, the leadership ability, the understanding of the game, the work ethic to do it and be successful at it. I think he'd rather play as long as possible before he has to consider that.
Yeah, I'm sure you'd welcome back with open arms if he ever wanted to come join you.
Absolutely.
Well, I appreciate it.
We've had that conversation. He's talked about whatever he's done that, if he wants to coach and whether he'd have an opportunity. And I told him absolutely.
A couple of follow-up questions. Jacob, did you have one? Go ahead.
Mike, there's been a lot of success around Stillwater outside of you guys, baseball, softball. women's soccer, Jim Littell's squad. What is it like around there right now with all of that, with all the success and amongst you guys as coaches?
I'll say this: there's an unbelievable amount of support from one program to the other throughout, and the coach is led by the head coaches, and I think we all like to see each other have success, and we know that we're all in this together. I recognize that if Kenny Gajewski has a really good softball program and Josh Holliday has a really good baseball program, it only is going to help create more buzz and energy and excitement about kids wanting to be here and exposure that they get. And I think that, Colin Carmichael and Jay Waterday and Chris Young recognize if the basketball program is doing well, it's good for them as well. And I haven't been a head coach anywhere before, but I've seen the interaction in the athletic department at other places. This is the best I've ever been around in terms of chemistry amongst the programs and the leaders of those programs. And it was important. I don't know if you remember back in the fall, right around the time we all took pay cuts. I think Bill Haston may have wrote an article about kind of some disjointment or whatever it was. And the head coaches came out and said, no, we understand, we don't like this, but we're all in this together. We all are trying to help each other have success, and these sacrifices are necessary. And we know that it's going to be, it's not going to be forever, but we're going to pull for each other as much as we can to make sure we see each other have success. And I think moving forward, you're going to see all of us support each other. We talk often, and a lot of it has to do with Mike Holder's leadership. He's empowered his coaches to have that type of approach, and I think it's kind of bleeding throughout the department.
I think Littell said yesterday you guys have a group text going. It's pretty lively. What's that group text like right now?
It's pretty good. I mean, a lot of people winning a lot, so that's always good. And we obviously follow each other. Jim's had a hell of a year. I have no idea, and I don't know anything about women's basketball, right? That's why I say I only know a little bit about basketball, and I say that because I don't know anything about women's basketball at all. But how they could not be ranked in the top 25, and you asked if I follow Bracketology, how they're a 9 seed in second place or whatever it is in the Big 12 completely boggles my mind. So, Kenny Gajewski's got a team that I think is going to be back in Oklahoma City to compete down there. If they're going back to Omaha, I think Josh Holliday's got a team that can compete there. We're going to have the tennis national championships across the country again. It's a great time to be in Stillwater, and know a lot of young people are watching. This is a good time to come here right now.
Thanks, Mike.
Marshall, did you have a follow-up? Go ahead.
Yeah, just real quick. This kind of goes back to the bracketology questions, but I believe in the net and in Ken Palm and stuff like that. I think you guys are in the 30s. With how weird this year has been, you don't know if a guy's out for COVID, how long this team's been out, and that affects their play. Do those kind of algorithm-based rankings kind of get thrown out the window, do you think?
I don't know. And obviously, I've always said I follow the numbers, I look at them, but I'm not married to them. The numbers would have told me against Texas Tech when Cade picks up his 4th foul that he needs to sit for about 6 minutes. No thanks. No thanks. I got no interest in that. And so you got to have some feel. And I think sometimes the numbers try to tell you that they can predict what's going to happen. And maybe that's why our Ken Palm numbers and our, net ranking isn't quite as high because, apparently we're supposed to blow out these teams in the Big 12 who are also really good. It's not who we are, and it's not really realistic. There are very few blowouts in this league, and kind of held us down. But the key is you got to focus on what you can do. I have no idea how they're going to put together the bracket, but I'm interested to see it. And if we're a part of it, I'm going to be thankful for the opportunity.
That was kind of my next question. Do you think that there could be maybe more surprises because of that with, it's a group of people trying to pick stuff off, all these different maybe algorithms, maybe personal views? Do you think there could be more surprises this year than normal?
Yeah, here's something to think about. Here's going to be what I think is going to be the biggest surprise, and I hope this doesn't happen. So team number 69, so the first team out, is basically going to be on standby. And if something happens, let's just say something happens with the number 1 seed, they have a breakout next week, they can't play. That team goes into their spot. So that team's usually either your middle to lower pack of a Power 5 conference, right? Who has some good wins, but also has got probably a lot of losses, and so you're trying to couch how good they are, or a mid-major team who's got a lot of wins, but not a lot of wins over great teams, and they normally would be an 11 or 12 seed if they got in. Well, they're going to be in the number 1 slot. And they're going to get to play a 16 seed who they're going to be expected to beat. And they're going to possibly, in the Sweet 16 or Elite 8, play another 11 or 12 seed to go to the next round. And so it's going to be weird stuff all over the place. And what we got to do is just enjoy the madness that's about to ensue.
Appreciate it.
We've got time for one more follow-up before we have to get to yet another COVID test. Barry, close this out.
Yeah, Mike, I got another one unrelated to actually your games this week. Everybody's gone casual, you coaches on the sideline this year. Is that something you think we'll stick with when the crowds come back and everything's back to normal? Will you fewer coats and ties, or will we go back to the traditional look?
I hope so. I hope we stick with this. I like this a lot better. I've already ripped 2 pair of pants because I like to get in the defensive stance every now and then. And, you know, suits are just not meant to coach in. I mean, it's just, I don't know who started that. I'm sure it was somebody well-respected, and that's where it got developed. But, you know, this is basketball, right? Does anybody else coach in a suit and tie in any other sport?
There's few NFL guys used to, and the NFL outlawed it. Tom Landry did, Dick Nolan did, and they don't let them do it anymore.
We need that person to come in and say, you're not allowed to do that anymore. It won't be me because no one listens to anything I say, but that if they want my vote, I vote for casual.
Do you remember the circumstances on the pants you ripped?
It was funny. So it was my first year as a head coach, and you know, I've said this before, right? I'm a pretty low maintenance guy, so I don't spend certainly up to that point, I hadn't spent a whole lot of money on nice suits. They weren't really expensive things, but I learned the value of them when we're playing West Virginia at home. I think the first Big 12 game that I coached in, and it was a close game. I think we almost won. If not, we missed a few free throws and layups late. And I got down in the stance one time, and I thought that I felt something. This was in the first half of the game, by the way. All right. So I had my coat on, and I go into the locker room, and I tell the staff, I just ripped my damn pants. And I can't go back out there in these pants. And, you know, I was thankful and fortunate that one of our managers, kid named Isaac Rosenthal, was willing to give me his pants for the second half. And no one ever noticed. I took a picture of it and sent it to my wife, and it's been a bunch of jokes since then. So she's made me buy nicer clothing since then. And unfortunately, now I may not need them anymore.